Should we talk about the weather? Should we talk about the government? That's me in the corner, losing my religion. I could be R.E.M. Anyway, what an introduction this is. But anyhow, I want to talk a little bit about a series that I called. Now it's like past tense in a way, but not really. First time spins, okay? And this year in 2026, I said I was going to start up this series where I was going to listen to 3 or 4 records every now and then, or CDs, and I was going to talk about those 4 titles. This is albums I've never heard before, and I was going to do more volumes of these. Well, I decided I'm not going to do that per se, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to talk about albums that I've just heard for the first time. I just did a video on Frank Sinatra's 1970 album Watertown, so check that out. But the reason I really am doing this is I've thought of this for a while. Last night I was on a long drive and I decided I would listen to a couple of albums. All right, the first one was, and this is a compilation album. I mean, the series First Time Spins is not supposed to be for compilations. It's supposed to be just for straight full albums. But this is a really good Neil Diamond compilation. And what I was going to do was I was going to listen to Disc 1. And I did. I listened to Disc 1, all of Disc 1, 17 tracks. There were 3 discs here. And that begs the question, how much Neil Diamond do I need? And it begs the question again, a favorite topic. Do you have to listen to everything? But, so that's what it comes down to. Okay. Now, so many topics, and I have some notes here to remind myself of what I want to talk about. Certain times, I only need certain tracks. I only need to hear certain tracks. That's it. An example is here, this 1989 album, Green, by R.E.M. All right, I bought this because I like the song, Pop Song 89. I also love Stand, and I also love Orange Crush. I remember liking this back in 1989 when it first came out. But I never heard the entire album, and last night I did, and I like the sound of R.E.M. I like the voice. I like their style. There's a lot of other R.E.M. songs I like that are not on this album. But what happened to me was I said, why am I listening to this? Again, I found myself thinking it was okay, other than the 3 hits, if you will, that I knew. The rest of it was okay, but that's too often the case for me. I feel like I don't necessarily want to take my time, spend so much time now at this point in my life. I'm going to be 64 later this year, and I'm sorry, a lot of people don't like talking about this, but it's a reality. It's not being morbid. It's not being negative. How many good lucid years does one have left when they're 64? I mean, I don't know if 10, 15, 20 years, 25 if you're lucky, and how many of those are going to be clear? I have records, videos, books, magazines, you name it, comics, things that I have never cracked open, things that I will probably never enjoy even once in the rest of my remaining years, let alone over and over and over. The reason you have things like this in your collection, presumably, is because you want to enjoy it, not just once, but again and again and again through your life. Well, that's okay when you're 18, 21, 30, 35. Once you start getting into your 60s, and it may happen to some of you too, you may notice what I mean. I'll get back to this in a minute, but the bottom line is, just let me say, following this, I decided that what probably is good for me is ideally to get a CDR, physical copy, made up with the 10 or so tracks that I love from R.E.M. and call it a day. Take it, R.E.M., CDR, whatever it is, I burn the tracks I like. And for the rest of my life, if I ever have an inkling to hear R.E.M., I pull that disc off and it's got my favorite tracks on it. Are there other hidden tracks on some of R.E.M.'s other albums that I may love? Maybe. Of course, I'm not any stranger to that. Many times I've played an album and I've said, oh, look at these songs. I remember hearing a Ike and Tina Turner song that I liked that wasn't a hit, and I bought an album just because I liked that offbeat track. One other one comes to mind. I remember going to the flea market and getting the album by Paul and Paula, that old duo. They had a hit with the song Hey Hey Paula, you know, and I played the whole album, and I loved the whole album. I didn't expect to love the whole album, but again, how much time do we have? Flip that calendar. What do I want to do with the time I have left? Uh, you know. Now, let me just talk a little bit about something with this Neil Diamond. I recently saw the movie Song Sung Blue. That was really good. It's about a real life Neil Diamond interpreter and his wife. The two of them went out as an act of lightning and thunder. Anyway, and that got me into listening to Neil Diamond again. Well, the first disc that I heard has 17 tracks, and out of those 17 tracks, here are the songs that I knew and liked. Solitary Man, Cherry Cherry, Girl You'll Be a Woman Soon, I'm a Believer, Red Red Wine, Shiloh, Kentucky Woman, Holly Holy, Sweet Caroline. That's it. The rest of them, I don't think I'd heard them. You know what? They were okay. But again, I got that feeling if I never hear them again, I'm good. Sometimes some of these overbloated compilations can have songs you don't really want to hear all the time, or if ever again. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I'll get back to talking about the series to come as I finish. I'm writing notes down so I don't forget. John Lennon, who of course I always liked, John Lennon was notorious for saying, singles, 45s is what I was hooked on. He said, I never really listened to a whole album. He goes, I don't like listening to a whole album. He says, there's no Beatle album, no album of mine that I could sit there and listen to a whole album. He says, so singles is what I was into. In a lot of ways, that's me too. But then again, take Bob Dylan, for example. I like Bob Dylan, and I have almost just about all his albums. I'm missing a few through the cracks here and there. But Dylan is not a commercial pop bubblegum artist, and yet I like a lot of his album tracks. I like what he does. So Dylan is an example of somebody that I definitely have to listen to those albums that I have not yet heard. I have never heard Street Legal. I've never heard all of Desire. Can you believe that? I've never heard all of Blood on the Tracks. Can you even believe that? Those are two great ones right there. But Dylan is somebody I'm interested in. I have to be invested in the artist if I'm going to spend the time, to listen to it. I got a couple of memories here. Like I remember when I did First Time Spins and I listened to a full album, and I can't remember if it was the Temptations or the Four Tops. It might have been the Four Tops. I can't really remember. I get some of those Motown artists mixed up sometimes, and I remember that they had the song I Can't Help Myself on there. I think it was Can't Help Myself, and I love that song, that single. And when I played the album, it was a lot of filler to me. I'm sorry, a filler. I mean, there are some artists I want to hear everything. Elvis Presley, I listen to just about anything Elvis does, just about. Even somebody like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, I'm interested in Tom Petty's albums as a whole. I got a thing for Joan Jett and the Blackhearts since I was like 19. I like Joan Jett. I'll listen to Joan Jett in full, but not everybody do I want to or need to hear everything. If I happen to discover a new artist or a new album just on my path, great. More power to me. I remember discovering Elle King that way. I liked Elle King. I heard her and I started buying her albums. And I liked most of her albums. I found out there were songs, not just the singles, there were albums on Elle King's albums that I liked. There was an artist one time called Jenny O. And nobody ever heard of Jenny O. I talked about her, it must be 11 years ago, 12 years ago or something. One time I heard about this artist and I heard one song. I thought that's pretty good. And I went out and bought the album, Jenny O. And nobody's ever heard of her since, including me. Lilac. There was an online heavy metal sounding hard rocking group called Lilac with a female lead singer. And I started getting into hearing some of their interpretations of songs. They did do a lot of covers too. And Johnny Cash I started getting more heavily into. My only reason for bringing these names up is to tell you that, yeah, there are times when And it's all individual. There are times when there'll be somebody that, for whatever reason, I want to go a little deeper. But I don't want to go deep for everything. Can you really go deep for every single artist and every single album and every single song ever written, recorded? You can't. And you have to be a little more choosy. There's a saying here. Some people say, some music fans, they say life is short, so listen to as much new music as you can because it's overall too quickly. I say life is short. Enjoy as much familiar stuff that gives you pleasure over and over again. Listen to that another couple of times, you know. Yes, I get tired of the same old thing too, and I give it a break. But I mean, I'm just not a guy that loves looking for new music. I'm just never have been, never will be. If it just falls in my lap, then I'll enjoy it. That's what happened with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I heard I Love Rock and Roll way back in the early 80s, and I wound up liking Joan Jett. It just worked out. Had I never gotten to there, and I never appreciated her stuff for rock and roll, well, poor pitiful me. I'm missing out. You're not missing out. All right, so that's the gist of what I want to say, but I do want to talk a little bit about... let me see about this. Well, let's just say this series that I kind of was calling First Time Spins. Again, what I'm going to do is, just like the Watertown Frank Sinatra video I just recently did, from time to time I will make a video about maybe one album here or there. I'll try to listen to a little more, and if I have anything to say, good or bad, I will make a video. And I'll talk about an artist or an album other than the usual stuff I listen to. But I'm not going to make it a ritual where I have to say, I have to make a video. It's time to make a video. Another First Time Spins video. I got to listen to 3 or 4 new records a week. I tell you, I was feeling that. While I was listening to R.E.M. last night in the car, I was like, look, you know, I like Pop Song 89. It starts the album. And then I'm like listening to a couple of tracks. They're not bad, but a lot of times I find myself saying, you know, where's Orange Crush on here? Where's Stand? You know, I want to get to the ones I know. Not every time. Most of the time. It's just not worth it for me putting in the time and effort at this stage of my life. That's just me. You do you. Thank you all for watching.